This is episode number 2 of the Dreyer Drive podcast, a podcast all about siblings and the people and places and pop culture that raised us. I am 50% of the hosts, which actually doesn't sound very pleasing. I am one of the 2 hosts, Ryan, and I am joined by my younger sister, Jacqueline, and we're here to talk about all things siblings. And let me tell you this, 10-year-old Ryan would be so stoked that 42-year-old Ryan is talking about the siblings that we're going to talk about today, because these 4 pizza-loving siblings define more than a decade of our childhood and still make appearances from time to time now. We'll also talk a little bit about our irrational attachment to our children's toys, and of course, we're going to share with you an unhinged text from one of our family members. Let's get into this. So, welcome to the Dreyer Drive podcast, a podcast where 2 siblings talk like auctioneers and keep score of how many times they can cut each other off, and the winner gets nothing.
No, the winner gets a scolding from our father.
Yeah, really, it's just a quest to create the world's most difficult to edit podcast. Can I just tell you how difficult it was to edit episode number 1?
We move really quickly, and I think we realized after you tried to edit that there's so much overlap in the way we speak. And we speak it because that's the language that we've developed over 40 years of knowing each other, is that we just go really fast and it's like, there's no time. And so everything just comes out in one like layered line all the way up. I think I've described it as like, when people are deciding when to be on a baseball team and they go up the baseball and whoever caps it wins. I feel that's how we've always talked, is like do and then cap and then on to the next thing. I'm not surprised that all of us who have partners who are, they're pretty quiet. They're all super funny, but also pretty quiet and reserved. And so when we do get all together to watch those, there's 4 of them, right? 4 married-ins partners, to watch them like physically back away when this happens. I see it all. They back away from the table and let us all like lean in, because I like imagine how overwhelming that is for them.
When I was going through the edit, you know what's really funny is that our cackles are the exact same. It's hilarious. Like if you put them like wave over wave, they have like the same like 3 peaks of like the
You're like, this is scientifically proven. We have the same laugh.
It's like a DNA strand. You know, like you see like science movies, or you see like movies where they're like, they line up the DNA strands, like it's a perfect match. We've got the killer. That's what it was like editing episode number 1. I can line our cackles up, and like mine is obviously a slightly different tone, but the cackles are literally peak for peak the exact same wave. It was pretty funny. This is the Dreyer Drive podcast. This is a podcast about siblings and the people, places, and pop culture that raised us. This isn't a podcast that is done by 2 auctioneers. This is a podcast that is done by 2 siblings, myself, Ryan, and my sister, Jacqueline, where we talk about ourselves, our upbringing, and then we also introduce other people, other siblings, and talk about their upbringing and the people and places and pop culture that raised them.
Perfect.
Episode 1 is not out yet, meaning in real time as we're recording this, we have not released episode 1 yet. But I'm wondering if your family has taken a listen to it while you've been trying to figure out, we've been going back and forth about what parts to potentially cut, or how we want the flow to go. So I know you have a copy of it. I have a copy of it. Has anyone listened to it?
So I listened to it first, obviously, while cleaning my kitchen. And then I have an 18-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old son, and a 7-year-old son. And my 15-year-old son is just as mean as we are, so he's the one that I wanted to listen to it, because the other 2 are nice. So I was like, I gave it to him. He was playing Minecraft, and I just like put the headphones on his ears, and I'm like, just listen to it. And then I was cleaning the kitchen listening to a different podcast, and he kept talking to me, so I had to keep taking my headphones off, be like, what? And he'd be like, I didn't know that happened. And then by the end of it, he said he loved it. I mean, he might just be trying to get on my good side, because I do finance everything about his life. He did say he was like more Porter. Like he wanted specifically more childhood stories.
Have you talked to mom or dad since we recorded the first episode?
I talked to mom. She had her eye surgery.
Dad sent me a picture of mom with an eye patch on. And of course they chose, like, I'm imagining it is the year 2024. I'm not imagining that part. I know it's the year 2024. But I'm imagining in the year of 2024 that they have eye patches that do not look like they are straight from a pirate. Because the picture, the picture that Dad sent me, Dad sent me a picture of mom is like the literal like shield shape black eye patch. I'm like, did they not have any others of... It actually was like... It was. There was a parrot on her shoulder, which I thought was leaning into it a little bit too hard.
She had a little handkerchief on her head. And so we do want to start with our question of the week. And I have a really good one. You did the question last week, and I got to come in. I had to come in fresh, no prep. And I'm like, ooh, I'm preparing. I'm writing a thesis on this. So my question is, if 26 Dreyer was a like Graceland style museum, what item would you want to keep on display forever?
One of two things. So I think one would... So the buffet for me. It would be the buffet. Okay. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this word, because I believe that we were using it incorrectly for the entire time that we
100%.
lived there. I don't know if that's actually what it's called, but we called it the buffet, and it was this like... What is it? A table? A desk?
A table. What is it? I believe it was a table that was... I think it's originally meant to hold like napkins and fine silverware, and that's why it's called the buffet. It's like you would use it for serving purposes in a dining room. We did not use it for that.
No, we use it as the catch-all for like, we don't know where this thing goes, therefore we will put it into the buffet. So there'd always be like, Mom, have you seen my New Kids on the Block cassette tape? And she'd be like, did you check the buffet? And so I think that like, if you went into the buffet... Anytime I cleaned it out, I remember being like, this is where this was? Or like, you find different pieces. So the reason I chose the buffet is because it has so many different things in there. Like the destructive David children's story was in there. All of the cassette tapes were in there. Balls of yarn, pictures, drawings, art projects, candles. Like everything was in the buffet. So I would want to take the buffet as is, because of all of the different items that would be in there.
I was going to say my big chore when I was growing up, my chore was always to take care of the buffet. Like I always had to dust the buffet and organize the buffet. And so like the smell of, I don't think it was a very nice buffet. Like definitely like wood veneer, not real wood. So like the smell of the wood veneer. Like I'm smelling like Pledge on wood veneer, and like that's one of those smells that will never leave my brain. And
it never actually really dried. It was like this kind of like sticky shellac, waxy. I think is the word. It was like a weird sticky shellac. But yeah, I think that's what I would choose based on the fact that it held so much of our childhood. The other one I was going to say, do you remember when we changed our phone number from 683-8491 to 619-1404? Yep. And we moved from the, what's the phone called? A rotary phone? We moved from the rotary phone to like... phone? Yeah. And it was that white one with like the weird like
hey,
red light.
Hey, stop talking because that's mine. That's the one that I was going to say. I was going to say that white phone.
No!
100%. I'm like, this is going to be
with
so
the super
good.
Stretched out.
With the stretched out cord, with the red light that lit up when you got voicemails. And I'm like, specifically because that phone was like this, like truly the center of our entire home for 10 years, because it was like our entire social life revolved around this phone. Our dad would get up every morning and make phone calls. I don't know what the phone calls were for, but it was just like he would get up in the morning and like call like for oil changes and like doctor's appointments and stuff. So he used it all morning, and then after school it was just like a like hang up, pick it up, hang up, pick it up for everybody. And then I'm like, and that kind of also moves into it, then became our conduit for the internet. So like that phone was also for a while our social life on the phone, but then it became like the computer social life. So I'm like, I really feel like it would be that phone in a glass case, just like this was everything to me.
It also represents two big steps for the Porter family. One, moving from the rotary phone into like the digital phone, like that step into like the we are here, right? And then it also represented, like you said, the step into like the internet era with dial-up internet, because that was the one that people would pick up that would interrupt the signal or interrupt the dial-up internet. So it does represent quite a bit. I'm pretty sure it's when it represents most of us having like our first crushes and dialing up and trying to walk and trying to avoid other members, because that
cord was so long.
It was you could go around into the living room and almost all the way back around into the kitchen with that stretched out cord. So, and there were multiple fights over that phone. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Do you remember? It's strangely enough, my two best friends growing up were the siblings of your two best friends growing up. So
yes,
I had
which is completely natural.
Which is so strange when you think about it, like so weird. But two of our best friends had a kid line phone. Do you remember? They had the parents' line and the kids' line. And I remember the fact that the kids had their own line was like mind-blowing luxury. Like I couldn't even fathom a world in which like you could have your own phone line, because ours was such a constant fight over who had the phone, and to just like be able to call them and only the kids were allowed to use the phone. Like that's all I ever wanted in my whole life was a separate line.
Like, how much money do you have?
No, literally, I thought they were so
throw it away
rich.
on kids' phone lines.
And I still remember that number too. I think we are ready then to start talking about our siblings of the week. And what's crazy about this is last week I knew, like by the time we finished recording, I was like, I already know what I'm doing next week for sure. And last night I'm watching Jeopardy. Final Jeopardy, so the end, you know, what everybody's risking all their money on. I watch Jeopardy every day. Final Jeopardy is a question about these siblings. And I want to ask you the question to see if you knew it. I knew it immediately, like so quick. I want to see if you can get it, and you can tell what we're going to talk about based on the question. Okay, so the category was fictional groups. How much do you wager?
How much would I wager of surely $36,000 that I have sitting on my teleprompter, but on my screen in front of me.
Screen.
Yeah, so the 36,000, I'm going 35,800. So everything but $200.
Okay, so here's the Final Jeopardy answer. Maybe because he was too Baroque, Bernini was rejected as a name for a member of this group created in 1983. Now, Final Jeopardy questions always have two clues in it. So the two clues then would be the 1983. Formed. And the other clue would be that the word Baroque.
Were the Osmonds a thing in 1983?
They are
Jackson
not
5
fictional
were before
people.
that.
Fictional.
Oh, it's fictional! Oh, I totally forgot about that. So we know I don't get the money, all right? So I'm down to $200. Give me another clue that might help me with this one.
The other four members of this group had Renaissance names.
The Ninja Turtles?
The Ninja Turtles! You get it! I wanted to talk about Ninja Turtles specifically. I'm like, okay, so picture this. Let me take you on a journey. It is a Saturday morning. It's a Saturday morning in, let's say, 1988. We have one television in our house, and we all have to agree on something to watch it. Our TV room on the house on Dreyer Drive was a big hearth room where we had a big fireplace that never worked. Birds flew down it all the time. So mom and dad just boarded it up and we didn't have a fireplace. Yet it still had these like giant stone column built-ins on either side where we would keep all of our like movies and stuff, that we used it for like VHS tapes. And the Ninja Turtles was on repeat all the time. I think it was one of the very few shows that we would put on and everybody agreed on. So we watched it a lot. And guess what? There are four siblings and their sibling dynamic is wild. So I wanted to give you a little backstory on why Ninja Turtles and where they came to be, and let's go through kind of their personalities and that kind of stuff. So Ninja Turtles...
I know where they came from. Hold on, I know where they came from.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Nuclear goop. The nuclear goop. There is no question that that's the origin story. I've seen it.
That was the secret of the ooze, but that was not their best movie. So Ninja Turtles were started as a comic book, 1984. That is the year that I was born. And by these two comics called Eastman and Laird. They were people who were like, we're going to have a studio, but their studio was really just like the living room at their mom's house. So they actually called it Mirage Studios because it didn't exist. And all they were doing was trying to come up like with one character that people would like. They were kind of jaded. And because of that, they started drawing like a parody comic of all the things that were dumb about other comics that they hated. Namely, that they always were about like an animal. There was always some type of like ninja power. Even the name like the foot in Ninja Turtles is actually an offshoot of the hand, which was from Daredevil. The name Splinter, their father, was actually an offshoot of another guy called like the Stick. And so they took all these things to make a parody. And even it was really violent too. The first comic was pretty violent just because they were making fun of it. They were making fun of how intense comics were. They would get really intense with these like weird animal characters. And they were like, this is so dumb. But they decided they finished the entire comic and they did an initial 3,000 issue run. Sells out immediately, like does so well, and they're like, what the heck, we're like living in our mom's basement. We did not expect this, to the point that in the first comic I believe Shredder dies because they never expected that this would go on in any way. It was a one-off completely.
So they bring Shredder back, which disappointed core fans.
All 3,000 fans.
The core
of the
fans
first one
left.
So they get an order after they sent out for $15,000 for issue 2. By issues 3 and 4, actually when they sell the $15,000, they both earn $2,000, and they're like, we did it. We're so rich. We're amazing, these two guys.
And this is, you said 1984.
Yeah, 1984.
We're talking, you could go out and buy a house with that kind of money in 1984.
So they get onto their next run, and it's they do their third and fourth issues. Third and fourth issues sell so well they are now more popular than the Avengers. Like, they had no idea it was going to go like this. And by the time they hit their 8th issue, they sell 135,000 copies.
I don't know anything about these two guys that created this. Lots of youngest sibling energy coming from this. They're like, I'm going to start a comic book. I'm going to make fun of all other comic books. 2 years later, they're bigger than the Avengers. And you've got these like teams of people who are literally like in like these paid for studios funded by all of these, by this company, this conglomerate that's like paying people, and everyone's taking it seriously. And you got these two guys that are like turtles that like pizza and their dad is a rat. And they're like,
and not only that, they hire all of their friends. They're just like these two guys from like growing up together. They hire all their friends and they're like, can I show you how to do this? And they're like, okay. So they're having like the best time of their lives. It's just like a group of like 7 animators, cartoonists making these Ninja Turtles and just like rolling in the money, right? They're loving it. So before we go any farther though, I wanted to see if you could remember like the core characteristics of each turtle.
Yeah, absolutely, I can. So you've got the 4 Ninja Turtles: Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, Raphael.
Right.
Donatello's the nerdy guy, right? He's the scientific brain. He can make inventions. Can you hear that? My printer is self-cleaning right now. It's decided that this is the opportune time to self-clean.
Printers are the biggest jerks ever.
And it's like, yeah, it's like, I've got this. Are you recording a podcast right now? Just give me a second. I'll be a second.
Oh,
it's
don't mind me.
I have a dot matrix printer, apparently. It's there just cleaning itself. So anyway, you might hear some noise in the background. My printer.
Okay, wait, before you go ahead. We used to have one of those printers that had, is that the dot matrix one that has like the
dot
strips
matrix,
on the side? Yeah. And
yes.
That was the first printer we ever had at our house. And the first thing I ever printed on it was literally you could print those long banners. That's all you could print, really, is long banners. And I printed out one that just said in its entirety, "No doubt is the best band." No clip art, nothing. It just said, "No doubt is the best band." And I hung that in my room so proudly.
And all of the ink was used, all of the paper was used on those like 9 sheets, one letter per page, and then no one would use the printer ever again.
And I don't think we did.
So, okay, going back to the going back to the question. So the characteristics of the four of them. So you've got Donatello. He's the scientific brain, the one who can do math and can come up with, inventions that help the Ninja Turtles. You've got Michelangelo. He's the free spirit. At one point, he was the surfer Ninja Turtle. He had a different clothes, but and there's a story behind that, which I'm sure we'll get to. But he was the, hey, dude, no sardines on the pizza, dude. That's Michelangelo. And Mikey is a recurring character in our house. Noah asks me all the time to do Mikey's voice. And fun fact, Noah's school has two turtles out front in this like kiddie pool thing. And every day before I leave, Noah and I, when I pick her up, when we leave, we're like, all right, Ninja Turtle dudes, we'll see you later, Ninja Turtle dudes, enjoy your pizza. We do it every day. So little known fact. So that's Michelangelo. Leonardo. Leonardo is the leader of the group. He's the one that has the kind of like more responsibility. He's the one that thinks of both sides. He doesn't always just act on emotion. And Raphael is the strong, somewhat angry character. In the movie especially, in the cartoons, he didn't have that same attitude. But in the movies, he was definitely the like, why am I losing? I gotta win everything in the movies. But in the actual cartoons, it was a toned down version.
Okay, and I do have to tell you at this point, I was going to wait till later. I do have to tell you that I had such a crush on Raphael in the movie. Like, I couldn't handle myself. And I married someone who is very Raphael coded to me. Like, he's just really grumpy a lot. And so, like, I was like,
he also carries around two size. He also walks around the town with two size under a trench coat, hoping not to be discovered. That's pretty Raphaelish, if you ask me.
I'm just
a red eye mask. Okay.
I watched it. I watched the first today as part of my research. I watched a documentary about all of this, and then I watched both the first one and then the most recent one, just to like. And I was like, Raphael, he still does it for me. I can't hide my feelings. He's like I still would.
All right, I like where this podcast is going.
Anyway, moving on. So they've developed this. It's just a comic book at this point, but it's doing so well that they are then approached by a toy company to license it as first toys. That's the next thing that they do. And I know this because I'm sure we had all of the action figures. I can remember playing with them. I remember, you could take off their little, what's it called? Masks?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Sure.
It covers their
Did
eyes,
you know that
eye
originally
masks?
in the comic book, they all had red masks, and the only thing that differentiated them was their weapons. But then when they became toys, they were like, oh, we need a way to differentiate these for kids. One of the stories they told in the documentary is that these artists had created a 4-foot tall Raphael out of foam. And when the guy came inquiring, like, what can we do with toys? They were like, here, take this. And he had to carry him home on the plane. And I just really love that idea of him with a 4-foot tall Raphael.
He had to buy 2 tickets.
And also nobody would have known what a Ninja Turtle was then. So it just looks like this guy is just cradling this large green monster everywhere he goes. Like, just love it.
That was predating any like therapy animals time, right? We're going back to the 80s. So this guy, like, he can't even claim, like, this is my therapy doll, this is my therapy turtle, my therapy Ninja Turtle. He just had to buy an extra ticket for his Ninja Turtle and just sit him down.
Around. But he is eventually successful in selling this licensing deal. By 86, they sell it to a toy company, and the toy company takes it over, and the toys are actually then the catalyst for the cartoon. That's what comes next. So, after that, that's in 87 when they start doing the television show, and then in 90, that's when they release the first movie. So, like, if you look at our family, Ninja Turtles hits, like, every single one, either birth dates, or we were, like, prime age for this when this happened. In 90, I was 6, you would have been 8, Daniel would have been 10. Like, find a more perfect age to be in love with Ninja Turtles, right? So as I'm watching, as an 8-year-old, Ninja Turtles falling deeply in love with Raphael, like, it's definitely one, I think it's impossible to have a set of siblings on TV, there's 4 boys, and not be able to, like, link them to the boys in our family. So who do you think you are as a Ninja Turtle?
I want to identify as Michelangelo, but I think the dynamic is, like, leans a little bit like Leonardo-ish in our family.
Now?
Like I look at like, yeah, now. As kids, I think I would have been a Michelangelo, I think. But now when it comes to like getting the family together to pool money together for like mom and dad's anniversary presents, or like figuring out a family vacation where we're all going to meet up somewhere, like those kinds of things, I typically am the quote unquote like the one that kicks that off, the leader. But I think as a child, I would have loved to have been the Michelangelo. Like, I really wanted to be the Michelangelo.
I think now Daniel would actually, I would have to kick him out of the Ninja Turtles and make him be Casey Jones. And I would have to be Casey Turtle.
So good. So good. Dan is Casey Jones. Nothing
when I was
is more
watching
fitting.
it today, because I was watching it to be like, who is who? Like, who can I put with who? And I was like, there's only 4. What are we going to do? Casey Jones shows up on it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's Daniel.
Yeah, like obsessed with sports, never really grows up. Like he shows up in an alley with like a hockey mask and a
ready to
and a
fight,
goalie
just
stick
ready to go every day. Like, what? We're fighting? Okay, let's go.
And he's a grown man. In the movie, he's a grown man. He just shows up and he's like, "You guys ready to play overtime?" And it's like, you are a
and
grown
he's
man.
weirdly protective of the turtles, even though he doesn't seem to really like them all that much, which is very much how we were as teenagers. Daniel was hyper protective of me. We barely spoke, and I don't know how many times he would... One time he made a boy grovel on his hands and knees and ask for forgiveness because he took my seat from me in math. And I'd be like, why? Daniel, why are you doing this? We don't even like each other. But it was just like his innate need to be a protector. Dan
loves being an older brother. He takes the role of being an older brother like very seriously.
Yes.
I remember as a like young kid, we were in the backyard and there were raspberry bushes in the backyard, and it was just him and I. Like I must have been like 6, he was probably 8 or something like that, and we were picking raspberries and we disrupted some wasps or bees, and Dan was literally like, "Ryan, save yourself!" And he like pushed me away from the raspberry bush as he got stung multiple times. And he was just his badge of honor. Like that was just him being older brother Dan, taking one because he's the older brother. And he literally like was like, "Ryan, save yourself!" and got stung a bunch of times. When he could have also ran away. Like we could have easily walked away from the raspberry bush unscathed. But he pushed me away and went to war with the wasps and got a bunch of stings as a result.
Well, Daniel fighting wasps, Daniel fighting anything is that's very Daniel as well. Like he's like, bring
very
it,
on brand.
It's on brand. So
Yeah,
I do think he's the Casey Jones. Obviously, Jonathan is Donatello because he's the smart one.
No question.
Like no one, and the funny thing is no one ever fights that. And we're like, well, Jonathan's the smart one. No one's ever like, I think I'm like, no, that's 100% Jonathan's the smart one. He can be Donatello. I don't know what Dallin would be.
I think Dallin is more of a Michelangelo-ish, right? Where I think, again, kind of like youngish child energy, where it's like less responsibility, and it's like, Michelangelo. Like, Michelangelo. There's scenes in the movie, I believe, where like Splinter face palms and just like, oh, Michelangelo. Like it's, you just get that pass.
And also
being
like, well, I don't, that's not fun, so I don't want to do it. And that's very Dallin.
Yeah. So I think Dallin would be a Michelangelo. I don't really see him very much as Raphael, except for the fact that Raphael also has that kind of like lone wolf energy. Like you think about, there's a scene where I think Raphael loses his sai in a battle, one of his sais in a battle. I think it's just one that he loses. And there's a scene where he's like walking in a trench coat and he screams, "Damn!" at the top of his lungs. And you can hear it echoing through New York City. Like, I feel like Dallin has a little bit of like very comfortable just kind of going off on his own as well.
Yeah, I agree. And he also, not Dallin, Raphael, in the movie has like a really inexplicable and tenuous grasp on like a Brooklyn accent. It kind of comes in and out. Sometimes he has a really, like, oh, okay. And apparently that was enough for me as a girl. Like, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
That was Cupid's arrow, a Brooklyn accent thrown in from time to time.
My other question was, did you know, here's some like random facts that I just thought were really interesting. Do you know who played the original cartoon Shredder?
No, I wouldn't even be able to take a guess because I can't hear his voice in my brain. So I have no idea.
It was Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince.
No.
My mouth dropped. Because I remember, like, we heard it as kids, but I would have never, as a kid, you're not like, this person also is this person. You're just like, it's just a voice on a screen. I have no idea about this.
It's Shredder's voice. That's Shredder. That's how he talks. It's his voice.
Shredder talks like Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince. That's the way it goes.
That's wild. I had no idea.
And then also the only famous person that's in the 1990 live action movie as a turtle. The rest of them were just like no-name kind of stuntmen, but Corey Feldman is Donatello. And he's actually not credited.
I do remember that. I do remember Corey Feldman being involved. My brain did not remember that he was Donatello, but yeah, the first one, like that movie, in my brain is perfect.
Oh, 100% agreed. 100%. When I was watching it, I can still say the lines. That's how often we watched it as kids. When they go to April and he puts his hand up and he says, "Shut it." I said, "Shut it." And Aaron, my 7-year-old was like, "Mom," because I was like, "Shut it."
Oh, absolutely. When they bring April O'Neil back to their home for the first time, and they're like, "Are you crazy?" "I'm crazy, okay? I'm stupid, okay?" He's like, "What do you say?" I thought I'd decorate a couple throw pillows, a TV news reporter. What do you think?"
That's when his Brooklyn
don't
accent
even.
would
It's
come
in here. Yeah. Couple throw pillows, a TV news reporter. What do you think?
Like, it's one of those ones that I watch and it's so familiar. It's like literally like, this is a part of me. Like, I know everything about this. And I love, honestly, the best part about having kids is introducing them to all the things that you watch. And half the time they're like, "This is super dumb, Mom." But this is one that like they're like on board. We're actually going through Transformers right now. Unfortunately, I don't think they're siblings, so we can't cover Transformers. But that's what we're working through. Okay, so the movie in 1990 makes $135 million, which in 1990 that's big money. That's big money, and so that's why they decide to keep doing it, and they keep doing every iteration they can think of. Some do better than others. Altogether, the 7 core films have grossed $1.3 billion in box office sales. And then the Ninja Turtles as a property was acquired by Paramount in 2009, and that has generated $8 billion in revenue from merchandise, movies, everything altogether. So, like, it blows my mind that this franchise is still just pulling in the money like it is. Like, it's so valuable, and I don't feel like people see it that way. I think people see like Marvel as like the franchise or whatever, and I'm like, no, miss me with that. I want Ninja Turtles and I want it now.
They are completely underestimating the 4 baby turtles, which is Splinter's voice when he's describing the origin
when I was
story
watching
of
the
Ninja
part
Turtles.
where Splinter is talking about his childhood learning from the ninjas, I laughed out loud watching him as a baby rat, doing his little like ninja moves in the cage.
Yeah. I feel like that's the only puppet in the movie that was kind of like, yeah, it's good enough. The other ones were perfected, but little Splinter in the cage.
I think little Splinter is Rizzo the rat from the Muppets.
I was just going to say, yeah, the Muppet babies are Muppets. They just repurpose. He's like, I think I got a rat lying around in the studio. Let me just go grab him. And they just like animate a few karate chops. And they're like, Splinter. Let's give him like an ambiguous Asian accent. Like, just like, he's not going to pronounce the R's very well. And I know this sounds terrible. Maybe this is not going to make the final cut. But they gave him
in
like
the 1990 versions,
Asian...
he's a black man. He's Kevin Clash.
Actually, that's who's doing
his voice is Kevin Clash, who was the voice of Elmo.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to end this just discussion on the Ninja Turtles with my favorite thing about them, which is it spawned a lot of copycats at the time because people were like, these Ninja Turtles, they're hot, hot, hot. Like, what do we do with them? So it spawned a bunch of different copycat ones that they were also trying to do the same thing. My 3 favorite ones, Samurai Pizza Cats, didn't do that well.
I do remember this. I actually remember that.
Then there was adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters.
No.
Yeah.
That was a thing?
And then, that was a thing. And then my most favorite was the preteen Dirty Jean Kung Fu Kangaroo.
I love seeing people searching for the ingredients. They're like, okay, something to do with teenagers, something to do with martial arts, and something to do with pizza, or something to do with something very specific to adolescence, like dirty jeans. Like, what? How does that make it? Isn't that what it was? What was it?
Yep, Dirty Jeans. It was preteen Dirty Jean Kung Fu Kangaroo. I almost said Kung Fu Panda. So when I'm thinking about all this, one of the things that I do contributed to why our family, first of all, like just really connected with them. And most cartoons in that time were either like really wild animals, like Looney Tunes or whatever, you know, Bugs Bunny, or they'd be grown-ups fighting things like He-Man. Those are like, and there was nothing that was like, this is how kids act, first of all. This is how kids act, and this is how they would act in a family. And I think those two dynamics together are just like so attractive to like a bunch of kids sitting in their parents' basement on a Saturday morning. Like, it could not have failed because that's all anybody wanted to watch at that time.
The other thing I think that makes it actually a little bit unique is, well, let me ask you the question. Who is the main Ninja Turtle?
See, because I was in love with him, I would say Raphael, but I don't think everybody would have that answer.
So if you remember, there wasn't a main Ninja Turtle. There were some episodes that were Leonardo-centric. There were some episodes that skewed towards Michelangelo. It's kind of like the Paw Patrol, right? Like, you kind of think that Chase is the main one, but then there are episodes where he's just not even really there. It's really about Sky, or it's about Zuma or somebody else, like weird references. But I think the reason that like our family also really loved it, and I think like the actual lightning in the bottle for that series was that it's about families, it's about sibling relationships, it's about Ninja Turtles that eat pizza. Like, let's not forget that. But there was no like main Ninja Turtle. Like, yes, it was probably like skewing Leonardo or Raphael in most cases, but then there were episodes where Michelangelo, like it was all about Michelangelo or Donatello, or, you know, there's ones where it's all four were on a level playing ground, and it was all about them working together to solve some problem. And I know I'm probably getting far too deep into this, but I think it allowed everyone to get, yeah. If you look at us, it's like, I think we all believe that we're the main character, and there are scenarios where we actually are the main character, but there is no true main character. Of course, it's a family, and that's the way that it works. But
and we also take turns being the main character, right? Like, sometimes there is a main character, but I think we swap out enough that it's not like weird. Like, sometimes one person is the main character. Like, you can't say it's not. It's usually when whatever person's like going through like the most life change, that they get to be the main character then.
So, quick little Ninja Turtle story for you. So when I was about, I want to say 10, let's call it 10 years old, right? Maybe a little bit older. But I went shopping at Woolco in Ajax. There's a Woolco, which eventually I think became like a Kmart, which eventually became a Walmart or something. But anyways. Oh, no, I went right from Woolco to Walmart. But anyways, so there was a Woolco, and I went shopping. Yeah, so I went shopping with a childhood friend of mine. We'll call him M-Dub for short. So I go shopping with M-Dub and his mother, and we were looking for toys to buy. And we get to the Ninja Turtle section. He was also really into Ninja Turtles. And we were looking for, they had just released the Surfer Ninja Turtles. And I had already talked about this earlier. But
their foot attached to the surfboard with a hole, yeah?
That's right. So we go to the section. They're all sold out except for one. There's the Michelangelo one left. And he's like, oh, I really want this. And I'm like, bro, I really want this. And so we get in like a mini kind of like, okay, I want this, whatever. And anyway, we come to a conclusion that as best friends, neither of us is going to buy this Michelangelo. Like we on our own, we're like, you know, neither of us are going to get it. Let's just leave it. It's for somebody else.
How very Ninja Turtles of you.
So we leave, very Ninja Turtle-ish, right? So we leave. I pretend to forget something, okay? I'm like, oh, I forgot something. And so I ran back. I took the Michelangelo, and I hid it in a completely different section of the store. Like, you would never be able to find this unless you knew that it was that you had hid it there. Like, no one's going to come across this Ninja Turtle. So we go home. He goes home. I go home. He goes back to the Woco with his mom that very day to try to buy the Michelangelo. How do I know? He tells me on the phone later that day. He goes, man, I went back and I couldn't find the surfing Michelangelo. So it was really popular. Someone must have bought it. And I said, oh, you went back to check for it? He said, yeah. And I said, you couldn't find it? He said, no. I'm like, that's because I have it. I went back before he went back. I had hidden it, so I didn't have to go to the toy section. I went to like the women's pantyhose section or wherever I hid it, grabbed the Michelangelo and got it. I was with mom or dad, I can't remember, but we bought it and brought it home. He's like, what? You went back and hid it? I'm like, you went back to buy it after we... So we got into a fight because we had both said we're not going to go back for it. He, thinking he was slick, went back to buy it with his mom later that day. He didn't know that I out-slicked him. Like, I out-Ninja Turtled him, if we're calling a spade a spade. I totally out-Ninja Turtled him, and I hid it in a completely different section of the store. But he played his card first, where he's like, I went back, I'm sorry. I know we said we weren't going to do this, but I went back, and it wasn't there, so now neither of us get it. And I was like, little do you know.
Joke's on
I
you.
own it. Yeah. I went back, I got it, and I hid it.
When you tell stories where the moral of the story is that you went back and bought something or mom and dad bought something, I have this small just like flame of rage inside of me because I'm like, why did mom and dad take you back to buy a Ninja Turtle? There's no way they would have bought me something after the fact. Yay! I always say you're the favorite kid. 100%. I guess you would be the Leonardo sometimes because... you're the favorite. These stories tell me that you were the favorite because there's no way mom and dad would take me back to buy a Barbie.
I am delighted that you brought the Ninja Turtles to the table today because they were such a critical part of our childhood. But really happy that you brought them because it was a nice little trip down memory lane. And it's going to be, now it's a new month. I'm actually going to go and check the streaming services to see if it's been added with this month's please. Upload of new. Yeah, because I really, really am curious to see if it's something that Noah would be into. And if not, I will watch it alone by myself on a Friday night.
Did you watch the long Bluey episode about the sign?
We have not.
Okay, so just prepare yourself mentally, physically, spiritually. My daughter and I, she is 18, I am 40, watched it on Saturday and spent an hour afterwards just sobbing into our dog's fur because it was so... We started crying 4 minutes into it. By the end, we were just like inconsolable and it's... so emotional. I don't know what they're doing over there, what they're feeding those writers, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna have to wait. There's something since becoming a father, like the tear ducts that I thought did not exist. Like I now find myself getting attached to the most, like the weirdest things. Like Noah's stuffed animals. I'm like, we can never lose Humphrey. If we lose Humphrey, like I am going to be devastated, right? Like we have this. It's nonsense. We bought this like little bird that's got an on switch and it has a motion detector. So it's this little like red and yellow bird. And anytime you walk by it, it'll like whistle or play like Old MacDonald. There's a couple Christmas songs it plays. Other times it just whistles uncontrollably. And I now walk out of the room in the morning and I'm like saying good morning to Seiko and Noah, and not just people. I'm saying like there's random individuals in our house. But there's one of the saying good morning, doing a good morning circuit, and like I'll walk past the bird and it starts like chirping, and I'm like, and good morning to you, little birdie. We can now not lose this bird because like I have an emotional connection to it. And quick little story. I don't think I've told you this one before, but when we first moved to Okinawa, it was probably months after we had put my dog down, Deacon, right? So I'd Deacon for 15 years, and it was my guy. Like, it was like through all those like monumental times as an individual. I was like a young single guy partying, meeting Seiko, dating Seiko, getting married to Seiko, starting a family with like having Noah. Like he was there for all of it. And so we put him down, like very like still like an emotional thing for me. And like I was in the bookstore here, I've got it behind me. I was in the bookstore here, and there's a book here, and it's called, like, the translation is like things your dog wanted to tell you. And so I'm in the bookstore, and I'm like, I casually pick it up, And I'm reading it, and I'm like 3 pages in, and I'm like, it's so true. I'm like literally crying in the bookstore holding this book, and I'm like, and I want to put it back because I'm like, it's too much. There's no way. And I like look beside me, and there's like a staff member beside me with his like blue vest and his like scanner, and he's like staring at me. I've got tears running down my face, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy it. And like went to the cash register, and now I own a book that I'm too scared to open called Things That Your Dog Wishes It Could Tell You.
Strangely, I'm worried that I might not be able to do this every week because I'm like, what if nobody texts me anything strange? But so far, so good.
But like clockwork.
Because today, our younger brother, Jonathan, he's currently on steroids for a stomach issue. And he's been texting me all of the weird symptoms that he's been having because he's on prednisone. And I've been on prednisone before. It makes you like swell up. It makes you actually a monster. Like I was a monster on prednisone. And the text I got in its entirety says, "Prednisone has officially turned me into a pregnant woman. I bought a grocery store sheet cake yesterday just because I was craving one." That's it. and I have not responded.
And I'm sure that he's going to be ecstatic that we're sharing this on a podcast. Listened to by millions and millions of people worldwide, translated into multiple languages.
It's like, I am a professional person. You cannot just have my name out there like this.
While he's eating a sheet cake, he's like, I love me telling you. He's eating it with his hands.
I'm imagining him in like, remember when Homer is wearing like the big moo-moo because he gains all the weight? Homer Simpson, he's wearing like the big... That's what I'm picturing. Jonathan just eating a cake in a moo-moo balanced on his belly.
Between you and I, we will be able to have one based on the communication that goes to the two of us. Because the one that I thought about sharing today, but we ended up touching on it anyways, was Dad randomly texted me the picture of Mom with her pirate patch and was like, we've got a pirate in the house. And that's it. Nothing else.
He said we have a pirate in the house.
Yeah, that's it. Look, and I want to share with you also the time lapse between that text and the text before that. So, April 24th at 9:04 a.m. my time, I got a text message of Mom with an eye patch that says "a pirate in the house." ... The message that was shared before that was 1 month before that. So there was like a 1 month gap between our last conversation on text. And then randomly I get I look at my phone. That's my phone vibrating.
Got it.
And I look on and it's Mom and her pirate patch like leaning on their like kitchen bar area, their like kitchen island. And it just says "a pirate in the house."
Yeah, that's how Dad's texts usually go.
And there you have it, episode number 2 of the Dreyer Drive podcast, all things Ninja Turtles, friendships, and pets. And we will see you next week on episode number 3 of the Dreyer Drive podcast. And there you have it, episode number 2 of the Dreyer Drive podcast. If you've made it this far, it means one of two things. One, you either loved it enough to stick through it and hear everything we have to say, or two, you hated it and you've actually just been skipping through to try to find a part that you actually like. Regardless, if you've made it this far, please, whatever platform that you're listening to this on, go ahead and leave a rating. It helps new podcasts tremendously when you do that. And also make sure you hit the subscribe button, and we'll catch you for episode number 3. Peace.